Howdy, welcome to my channel. Today I will show y'all how I created this super creepy house using scrapbook.com's Little Houses digital cut file. It has all the elements and you actually have two options. You could do a small size house or you could do a tall house, and I actually went with the tall house option. Yeah, I really like how I did it. So let me show you how I created this card. So let's begin. So I've already used scrapbook.com's Little Houses digital cut file to cut all of my elements for the house that I'm going to make, and I used my silhouette cameo to help me do that. This was a boo-boo that happened while I was removing the paper from my carrier sheet that it gets run through my die cut machine, but I'm actually okay with it because since it's supposed to be a Halloween house, I'm gonna work with it. I'm bringing in the soldering mat, and that's because I'm going to work on this piece. So this cardstock is Tim Holtz, and it's called Weathered Tin, and it is part of the Distress collection, which is why you can sand it, tear it, emboss it. That's why I'm okay with the fact that it did get ripped, because we're going to now bring in our sander to help us distress this piece even more. So now that I've distressed the front side of the house, I'm actually going to bring in this stencil. It's from Altenew and it's called Stonewall. Now, as you can see, it's a little bit smaller than our house, but that's okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to bring in some Post-it note to help us mask off the areas that our stencil doesn't fit over. And we're not having to worry about this portion right here, because this is going to be part of our flap that helps us to put the house together. And since the Make Art Station comes with a ruler, the ruler is also magnetic. Now this isn't, and we're just going to mask off all of this angled portion of the house. Going to use our magnets to hold our die cut in place. I'm actually going to bring the ruler in to help hold this portion as well. So the color we're going to use for our stencil is Hickory Smoke. We also will be bringing in some black soot. So we're just going to do some swinking to apply the ink onto our house. Now that that's done, I'm going to bring the black soot in and we're going to swink that too. Oh yeah, I really do like that. And this just gives our house a bit of an aged, creepy look, which is what we're actually going for. Now, just bring the stencil back in, then bring your ink back in to swink some more. And if you're worried about inky fingers, I would say use gloves. I think that helps add to the creepiness factor of your house. And we're just going to spritz this down a bit. Okay, So this is our roof, and this little hole right here is for our chimney. We're not fixing our chimney just yet, but we are going to work on our roof. So for our roof, what we're going to do is we're going to bring in some aged mahogany. We're also going to bring in this stencil. This is a Dylusions stencil, and it is called Small Fishtails. Okay, we're going to use our T-square to help us measure this piece, so that way we can figure out exactly where the center is. I'm actually going to bring in this scoring tool because it should actually help us out. This is a Martha Stewart one, but it was made by EK Success, if I believe. Right there. Okay, so there is our score line. So now that our stencil's in place, we're going to apply some aged mahogany distress ink. So we're going to use a makeup brush to help us apply the aged mahogany ink. And I know you may be asking yourself, what in the world? Why are we using the aged mahogany? What's it even doing? You can actually see right here that it is actually helping to create a little roof pattern, a little scalloped roof pattern. So there is that half of our roof, and now we can just move our post-its over to the other side and place our stencil over here and continue to stencil. There you go. There's our little roof. So I think that looks really nice. Now what we can do is we can spritz some water on here to activate this distress ink. So now we're just going to bring in some kitchen towel to help us dry this piece up a bit. And that looks really nice. So there is our roof, and it's going to go with our house. Now, but much like we scored our roof, I'm going to score our house. And to score our house, we're just going to use our Teflon bone folder. So we're just going to bend it over the way we think it should go, and then set that crease in with our bone folder. Now that looks nice. And we just need to continue this process. Oh, and we need to score right here as well. So yeah, we're gonna need our scoreboard. I'm gonna bring in the score pal for this. And all you need to do is make sure that where you believe the scoring needs to happen, you place the flap slightly over it, and then you just bring your score tool in. And you can bring in your Teflon bone folder to set that crease up. And then you just bring the Teflon bone folder back in to set that crease. Okay, so that is sort of how our house is going to stand, like so. This is just part of our house. We're going to do the same thing with the other section of the house. But first, I'm going to bring in the black soot. And I'm going to edge that over here in this torn section, just so it looks purposeful. Yeah, like that. Now what we need to do is we need to do the same thing on the other side of the house, and then we can work on our windows. We are going to bring in some transparency film. We're just going to trim the transparency film to the size we need it so that we can glue it over our window. So the way we're going to attach this portion of the transparency film is by bringing in some Mod Podge. You can bring in any type of Mod Podge you have on hand. This one just happens to be matte, but it's not going to actually be seen since it's going to just be on this inside portion. But we do need to make sure that everything is nice and straight. I'm just using a foam brush to apply the glue, and now I'm going to place our little house. I'm going to place this transparency sheet on our little house. I just want to make sure that it's nice and firm on there. So what I'm going to actually do, I'm not going to worry about cleaning the glue off of the acetate in the window areas just yet. While the windows are sealing to the house, what we need to do is take care of our little door right here. This is the door frame along with the door, and this door has windows that are cut out. So we just need to pop those windows out right now. We're going to use our tool-in-one to help us do that. It does open, and actually it was supposed to, I actually chose for it to be scored, but it didn't score it on my silhouette, and that's okay. Okay, so here is what's left of our acetate sheet that we've been working with, and all you need to do is need to take the door and the frame, and you need to attach glue to one portion of the frame and the entire door. That way your acetate sheet will be able to be attached to both. And we're using our foam brush to help us do that. You could use any foam brush you have on hand. This is just the one I grabbed. Now you just place your acetate sheet onto your door, like so, and then you also attach it to the frame. And that way you could open the door if you wanted to of your little haunted house. And we just need to trim off the excess of the transparency film. So I'm just going to use some scissors to do that. So we're going to set the door aside so that it can dry. While that's drying, what we can do is we can bring in our window pieces. And these are also going to need some, well actually these aren't going to need acetate, and here's why. Because we've already glued the acetate to the house. Now I did make some shutters for the windows, and all we need to do for our window frames is age them up. So we're going to use weathered wood, hickory smoke, and black soot on our window frames. Now this is an old technique that card makers use, that we used to do when I first started card making, and you just kind of swipe along the side. We used to do it on our cards and things like that. It's a little bit like swinking, but mainly you concentrate it on the edges. So here is our weathered wood. Okay, and for good measure, we're bringing in the hickory smoke. Okay, so those are our window frames, all nicely done up. We're going to set those aside for right now. We just need to finish with our chimney, which is actually why we have this hole here in our roof, because that is where our little chimney is going to hang out. Okay, so here's our door, and here is our house with all of the acetate sheets on it. This is supposed to be a haunted house, so what I'm gonna do is I am going to bring in some Tim Holtz Distress Paint in the color Candied Apple, and I'm going to splatter some of this Candied Apple on the inside portions of our windows, not on the outside. I'm going to do it on the inside because I think our outsides look plenty creepy enough, but I mean, if the outside looks creepy, you kind of want the inside to look creepy too, right? So, I'm going to bring in the Candied Apple and splatter some paint on it, on these acetate sheets. So, we're going to bring in our box, and we're going to bring in some paint. This is my little paint palette. If your paint is dry, you can always try to reactivate it with just some water. So, we're just going to bring in our toothbrush, and we're going to take it and spatter onto our windows. So yeah, I think that's pretty creepy right there. And yeah, just gonna have lots of gore and blood, and you might actually be able to see that a little better because this window is much larger than our door frame windows. There's some more of our little blood stains. I think it would make Dexter rather proud how we did our little blood stains. So we're going to set our little paint pieces to dry, and while we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to bring in our chimney. Now I have drawn some lines in here so I know where to score it once we're done, but we're just going to do some stenciling over our chimney piece right now. We are using the Tim Holtz stencil called Brick for our chimney. We're going to use some black soot because, well, it's a chimney, so smoke has definitely come out of it. And we're going to use some hickory smoke also. So we're going to actually brush through our stencil this time rather than swink through it. So I'm just going to bring in a makeup brush to help us stencil. I'm going to start out with the hickory smoke. See what that does when you actually use a brush through the stencil. I think that's rather nice. See our little chimney? It's all nicely stenciled, so it looks much more realistic. And then what we can do is we can spritz this with some water to activate it, and then we can set that aside for a minute to let the water do its thing. And now our paint has had time to dry over our house, so we can bring in our window frames along with our shutters. Now honestly, it would be tedious to attach glue to each of these, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to bring in a Xyron. So I'm bringing in my Xyron. We're going to stick our window pieces and our shutter pieces in here, and then we pull and we get a sticker. Okay, so now we can just pull this to there, and you just rip it off, and then you smooth out the piece before you remove the front. In fact, it says right here you're supposed to rub and peel, so it gives you directions. And now we just remove this plastic coating, and there is our little stickers that are the window frames and the shutters for our house. And we can attach our window frames and our shutters now. So I don't know that you can tell, but there are some sticky portions here that kind of like, I guess you might consider them like spider webs or something like that, which is why I was perfectly fine with the fact that we didn't run those white pieces through first before we die cut them. So that is just going to go right here. I think making a haunted house using this digital file is probably like the best thing to do, because you can work with all your mistakes and it'll just make your house that much more special. So there are our window frames. So there is our little house, and now we just need to attach the shutters that go with it. So I don't remember which shutters go to which windows, but I'm going to put these wider shutter windows with our large window, and then the smaller ones I'm going to use for our smaller windows. If you want to, you can just kind of like put it like that, kind of like crookedy. You can just like put it crookedy if you want to, and that just adds to your creep factor. But you could also totally use this digital file to create something super cute and sweet for Christmas. So yeah, it is totally up to you. Okay, so there is that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in some tear tape to help us put our house together. You could use glue. It's just because of these flaps, I'm choosing to go with some tear tape. Okay, so I'm just going to use the tool-in-one to remove the backing of our tear tape. And we're going to attach this piece to the front of our house. Now we can put this part of our house to this other part of our house. Just sort of attach our pieces together. There's our little standing up house. I'm going to also attach our door to our house. So I'm just going to get some skinnier tear tape to attach to the frame of our door. And there is our little house that is nice and spooky. And you can even kind of open the door a bit if you dare. So now we need to attach our roof, but our roof is still missing something. I mean, here's our roof and it's got this hole. So we need to bring our chimney back in and we need to score it, and then we can attach it to the roof. So I'm gonna bring my score pal back in. Now I could not actually tell you where the score lines are other than to tell you this. Wherever you see like a cut, that is basically where you need to score. But the the Little Houses digital file, it does come with score lines. So you could just use the score lines that it has. It's just, I chose not to because I have found that when I do score lines on my silhouette, that score lines are actually more like perforation lines, and I don't really like that. So we just need to use some score tape to attach this end of our chimney. So I don't really have nails, so I just use the tool-in-one to help remove the backing. Then I just fold over any bit of the score tape that is in excess, and then you just put that right here, like so. Just make sure that it gets put together nice and straight. There you go. There's a little start of our chimney. So what we need to do now is we need to place the score tape on these sides of our chimney. There we go. Now we can just pull that back through, and then we can remove the adhesive backing from our flaps. Pull that backing off and attach that to this flap right here on our roof, right there. So there is our first one. Then we just need to attach the rest of our flaps in the same way. So this is a little tricky for me. So I guess I would say the roof and the chimney are probably the trickiest portions to attach. So I have our house put together. The roof is a little tricky. So sorry I couldn't show that to y'all on screen how I attached it. But the roof is even trickier than the chimney. But now, looking at our house, well, our front door, yes, it has a bit of blood. It needs something more. It needs some more aging and distressing, and so I'm going to bring our box back in, and we're going to spatter some paint onto our door. I'm going to bring in some ground espresso distress paint, and I think I'm also going to bring in some tarnished brass distress paint. And we're going to do a similar technique to how we did the blood stains. Okay, there's a little bit of that. And now all you need to do is make sure that your toothbrush is clean. Then you bring your toothbrush into your paint and you spritz on it. And you take it with your finger and spatter it. We're trying to concentrate on the door, but if it gets a little on the house, that's okay too. But there you go. We have aged our door even more, along with a little more of the front of our house, the front door to our house, the front wall to our house. So our house is done, but I want to add some bats to it. So I'm using a retired edge punch. It's by Martha Stewart. It's called Gothic Bats, in case anybody's got this. And basically, I'm just cutting out the bats. Okay, so here are far more bats that have already been cut. Now, as you can recall, we did the windows using some transparency film, and I happen to have a small slip of transparency film still available. So I'm going to place that into our chimney, but I'm going to place some bats along this transparency film. These bats have already, well, I've previously used this sheet and I put adhesive backing on it, and I'm just making use of the leftover portions of that cardstock. Just going to use our tool-in-one to help remove the backing and our jewel picker to help us pick them up. So at this point, I'm just going to add more bats, because I mean, what could be creepier than, I don't even know what you call, like a nest of bats that are flying out? But yeah, what could be creepier than that? The bats flying out of the chimney sort of remind me of Scooby-Doo. Like, now it doesn't take a lot of liquid adhesive. You just have to make sure you have enough liquid adhesive. And right now, we are just going to, there you go. So there you go. There are some bats hanging out, or rather flying out of our chimney. So I think that adds to the whole haunted feeling of our house just a little more. Our house is just missing one more thing.
we're going to die cut some ghosts for our house. But we're not going to use cardstock. Tissue paper. To utilize our tissue paper, we will be bringing in some scrapbook adhesive sheet. That way it will give us more substance to our tissue paper. Also, it will allow us to create basically stickers of ghosts, because we're going to use our Sizzix Sidekick to help us out with the die cutting. Now, I do acknowledge that some of our tissue paper isn't necessarily flat, but I believe that that's actually going to be to our benefit, because that way it just adds more to the illusion. We're going to bring in a Post-it note in order to hold our ghosts in place. And now we just need to run our little ghosts and tissue paper through the machine. We have a couple of cut ghosts. And now we're just going to place our little ghost onto our house very carefully, because it is a flimsier piece. But there you go. There is our ghost. So if you would like to see more of these haunted houses that are created using the scrapbook.com Little Houses digital cut file, there is there's an Instagram hop for that right now. If you were wanting to try this and not have quite such a hard time, I would probably just say use cardstock, but I mean, it won't create the same effect as what I'm doing right now, because you can see through the tissue somewhat, whereas with cardstock you wouldn't be able to see through your ghost at all. I'm going to actually place that rather close to the window so it would appear that our ghost is escaping our house. So if you're taking count, that's actually 4 ghosts. But honestly, I don't think everyone's going to be able to see all 4 sides all at once. So I would think that people would mostly see like this side, so they'd see 3 ghosts, or this side, so they'd also see 3 ghosts. So I think I'm happy with the number of ghosts that we have cut today. I would like to thank y'all for sticking with me to the end of this video. If you like what you saw, click the thumbs up. If you have comments, leave them in the comment section. I will provide links for all of the supplies that I used in the description box below. If you would like to see future videos from me, click subscribe and the bell icon. I hope y'all stay safe, stay healthy, stay crafty. Bye y'all.